People are just becoming more conscientious of the impact that we each have on our planet, and that rapid consumerism has a lot of repercussions. You see people wanting to buy high quality. It's kind of like the idea of really cherishing and loving the pieces that you do own instead of owning a bunch that you don't even keep track of.
Hey, Holli, thank you so much for joining us on the Manufacturing Report podcast.
I am honored to be here. Thanks for having me.
Great. So you are the founder and CEO of a business called The Nice Racks. You sell something called The Nice Rack. Clever marketing, obviously. And I know there's a great story behind this, but why don't you first tell our listeners a bit about the product that you make?
So I got the idea for the Nice Rack when I was living in Scotland about 10 years ago. I actually saw a product very similar to it. It's historically called a Sheila Maid, but the design for it wasn't very aesthetically pleasing. However, the functionality was amazing. On pulleys, you're able to suspend your drying clothing up to the ceiling, where the air is warmer, it's out of your way. It's such a great use of space. And I've always line dried my clothes, a lot of them. So I kept that logged away. I didn't own a home at the time, but I kept track of that. And that's where I
Wow.
got the idea and the vision for it. Yeah.
That's pretty great that you were able to unlock that like a decade later or
Yeah.
so. And one thing that struck me, because I've both lived abroad and been abroad a lot compared to the United States, is that our culture for drying and dry cleaning is so much more intense than almost anywhere else you find in the world. I mean, what you're describing is like perfectly normal around the world. Is like basically line drying clothes, either inside or outside in some way.
Yeah. And the weather in Scotland, well, in a lot of places, isn't great for outdoor drying all year round,
True,
right? So
true.
it's a
Yeah.
creative use of space to pull it inside up towards the ceiling.
Yeah. So obviously you had this idea in your head. There's lots of ideas that people get about, oh, I should do this or I should do that. Executing on them, right? That's another thing also altogether. So what kind of elevated this in your priority list a few years ago? I think you founded it in 2021, so just a few years ago. But what was kind of the crystallizing moment that said, okay, now's the time to do it?
So I actually, when I got married, my husband had a home, and we have a pretty small laundry room. It's actually right
Mhm.
behind this door.
Okay.
And I remembered it not to sell it, but just because I needed one. So he built me one, just went to Home Depot, got some pieces, kind of made a makeshift version. And I would get asked about it all the time. And when people would come over, they're like, "That's brilliant. Where'd you get that? How do you get one of those?" And I've always loved business, so I've always kept an idea journal of business ideas. I honestly don't think this one ever made the list. I just have always been thinking about product. I love product. And so when I had so many people asking about it, that kind of sparked my interest. And at that time, I was doing custom closet and cabinetry
Oh,
design in people's homes. So
sure.
I started asking people that were my clients what they do to line dry their clothes, how they optimize their space, and I found that there was a greater need for this than just myself. And so, yeah, that seeing that there was a need as well as knowing it was something I could take on, I didn't want to pay premiums for product development when I was just starting. I wanted to be able to do it myself in my garage. And so that's what I did. I took it on literally in my garage.
Wow. Well, I guess I should ask, like, how many iterations did it take to kind of get it right, or was there like a do-it-yourself guide somewhere that existed from Edwardian times in England?
It's pretty rudimentary as far as like it's not very technical,
Mhm.
but I wanted it to be beautiful, and it took I would say I think I landed on either version 3 or 4 for what I have now available.
Okay.
Especially because I wanted the design and size to work really well with how homes are built. So I wanted the pulleys to align well with the way studs are placed in a ceiling. Just little things
Hmm.
like that that I wanted to be really conscientious of. And then, there's things you don't know until you get started. So I tried making the first version out of only wood. It didn't look very good. You kind of like just
Sure.
work from there. But my husband has been a massive help because he has an illustration degree, and that just tells you a little bit about him. He's extremely artistic. So I'm really good at the business sourcing, that kind of side of things, and he's extremely good at design. All my pictures, you can thank him for editing them and things. We're good complements to each other, so it helped a lot in building the product that he's good at design.
That's fantastic. Obviously, and is this something that you're still running from home then?
Yeah.
Wow. Okay. This is really cool. This is a true kind of like home built business. Okay, so your friends noticed this. How did you expand kind of like your marketing, your business opportunities? Because I know we get lots of folks who inquire with us, like, I have this idea. I want to make it either somewhere in the United States or make it here, but first of all, how do I do that? And then how do I sell that? So you're a great case study here. How did you go about it, Holly?
Well, I will reiterate that I've had a lot of ideas. I still have a lot of ideas, all sorts of things I want to create and will create eventually. But I wanted to start with something that was basic enough I could literally pound it out in my garage. And this
Mhm.
product, though it's beautiful, aesthetic, and extremely functional, it's it's basic materials. It's metal, it's wood, it's rope, and
Mhm.
I mean I can cut rope in my garage, right?
Yeah.
So with my husband's help for sure, I need to make sure that all of this comes with a big mention of his help because he's, he's been a huge help in helping me come up with ways to make the process, I guess, streamlined. Because it's one thing to cut one rope, but to do it in mass production in our garage that also houses our cars, we had to get really creative with our space.
Mhm.
So we've, if I could give you a little tour at some point, but we've put dowels in some places to then run the rope and line it up with a mark on the counter. So I now have 2 employees that help with the manufacturing, but they will put the rope up on the spool, walk it the distance, put it around the dowel, come back and use the slice and cut it. And that's just one part of the process. But I now have some local help with machining my metal. But the
Mhm.
first batch of 50 units, with my drill press in the garage, drilled every one of the holes. And
Wow.
there are, I guess, 14 holes per bar. And I would drill 2 bars at a time. And each product has 2 bars. So it was a lot of work. And as I was drilling those holes, I'm like, never again will I do this. But I didn't want to spend a lot of money up front to invest. I wanted to do as much as I could myself. Once I proved the concept and sold through those 50, then I started outsourcing,
Yeah.
and have found really good partners with that. But yeah, I think sorry, that's long winded, but my advice would be try starting small, try starting something
Yeah.
that you can start on your own in your house. It's a good way to cut down on costs.
That makes sense. And so there are obviously outlets available. Either, you got your own website, you can drive some traffic to it with a little bit of
Oh, yeah.
advertising. You have Etsy, you have Amazon, you have, Facebook. What were, I guess, how did you sequence that and how did you go about trying to find a larger customer base?
So first I did a social media soft launch, but I did not have a lot of followers. I just leveraged my existing social media account, which I think had like 600 followers. I mean, we're not talking impressive numbers, but I did a soft launch and I did that in 2022 and I got a few people. They were pre-sales, so I think like 5 people of my friends bought them, but it was
Mhm.
just enough to like help keep my confidence up. Like,
Okay.
okay, this is going to do well. And then I launched my website. I guess it would have been February probably. So they they waited a couple months to get the product, and then I launched my website. I have never brought in most traffic through my website. It's out there, but I really don't advertise on my website. It was
Hmm.
Etsy where I started seeing a lot of traffic. I think it was 2023 in March. I launched on Etsy, and the first day I launched, I remember scrolling through the pages trying to find it. Like, I am far down here. But somebody bought one the first day, and I think I
Wow.
cried. I
Ah,
cried and I wrote them a personal note and said, "Thank you for buying my first one on Etsy." I
ah.
was like so jazzed. And so
Mhm.
then Etsy has been a really, really steady stream. It's grown really well. One thing I do recommend on Etsy, they offer a advertising program where they will take a percentage of your sale only
Mhm.
if you make the sale and if it came from their advertising streams.
Ah, okay.
So it's nice because it's calculated. So I've been able to calculate that into my margins. It's not just like I throw out advertising and I wonder if it'll work. They manage that. So that was really good to help me just get off the ground. Since then I've launched on Amazon. I've been active on Amazon with FBA since November, and yeah, my sales have grown pretty significantly through my being more active on Amazon. So that's kind of my like those are the avenues that the platforms I'm selling on right now.
That's pretty great. I'm curious as well about like your customer base and like what you know about them, and if there's anything like, are they urban? Like, is there any identifying characteristic, or are you just getting like orders across the board from folks?
You know, I find I am intrigued by that as well. I find that I don't really get a lot of Western United States orders. I get some,
Hmm.
but
Hmm.
majority of my orders are back east. I get a
Hmm.
lot in Vermont, New York, like just
Hmm.
in that region. I
Yeah,
find probably the most interest.
kind of like Scottish climate too. Right.
Right.
That makes a lot of sense in places that, I mean, I guess if people want to line dry or air dry their clothes and they live in like in California, that's a lot easier to do outside
Yeah.
than, or Utah even, than if you're necessarily in a place that's harder to do that. That's super interesting.
I also find that it's varying. I thought it would mostly be people in smaller living situations, like in
Uh-huh.
apartments or really small
Sure.
homes. But I actually find that the orders sometimes, I mean, the home size varies dramatically. It's not, and I'm kind of learning that people are interested in this product not just to save space, but it's just a more aesthetic way of drying your clothes, no matter the size of your laundry room. So that's been kind of fun to observe.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. Are you at the point, I guess, it sounds like you've been able to grow sales year over year. Is there a point that you're like either you're gonna have like, because you're gonna have to buy, raw materials and everything else, like you're worried a little bit about financing or filling orders or capabilities or anything like that, or has it been pretty easy to manage so far?
You know, so far the growth has been steady and slow.
Hmm.
It is a challenge, especially the constraint of my space. I have a
Hmm.
small space I'm running this out of, and so I cannot just buy in massive bulk because I don't have a place to keep it, but I have to
Hmm.
make sure that I have enough that I'm able to keep up with the demand, right? And it's kind of this it's an interesting challenge that you only face in physical product, right?
Yeah.
This like physical storage space and the demand being somewhat predictable but also not entirely predictable. And so that's been an interesting just thing to navigate, I guess. But
Yeah.
as I'm growing and as I'm seeing quite a bit of growth right now, I'm finding that I actually haven't been advertising the past couple months because I'm kind of running low. So I'm just kind of waiting like on my supply chain. Like sometimes things just get held up. I'm trying to make sure I keep enough inventory to keep up with my demand till I can get more in stock. I have enough right now for my projections, but I need to not be growing to be able to maintain inventory.
Sure. Yeah, it's not a bad thing necessarily to have a wait list.
I will just speak to the challenges of manufacturing in America, keeping manufacturing in America.
Yeah.
Obviously, this time right now is a little bit unique in that there's now the tariffs being placed on imports, but there's some strain I'm seeing in even partners I have locally who, they can't get their raw material in the US, right?
Mhm.
And there are a few components from my product I don't think are made in America. I couldn't find these raw pieces in our
Mhm.
nation anywhere.
Mm.
So a lot of
Mhm.
manufacturing has been moved out of America, and it's challenging now because I hope to I want to be able to keep my production here. I like that it's manufactured here. I love employing people here. I love that it's my neighbors. I see them. They
Yeah.
come to my home, to my garage. We chat. We have a wonderful time. I love how intimate and close my process is to me. But we'll see how things kind of rattle out with the tariffs and things. But it's a bit of a stressful time in manufacturing, especially with parts that involve metal. There's just kind of a lot going on there. So yeah, I hope for those who are listening who are involved in manufacturing here that we can get some affordable options for steel and aluminum here in the United States because those are really important metals in my product and obviously in a lot of things that are made. So yeah, it's an interesting time to be in product right now.
Yeah. I mean, my hope is certainly that the ultimate goal of this is to bring more manufacturing to the United States. And that involves like, you gotta get the tariffs right. There probably should be some, but how much and on who, right? So that you're driving business inward too, and so
Yes.
that it can be made more sustainably, like you are, basically.
Yes. Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Because I love the idea of things of you feeling connected, kind of like you have the person you know that is your farmer that grows your food and you're
Mhm.
intimately involved in that and close to them. I like the idea of product being the same. And I hope that when somebody purchases my rack and they see that, oh, this was packaged by somebody by hand. This was taped up really by hand. That brings joy to them. That they know somebody put effort and time into this right here in my own country. So
Well, Holly, I do want to take a step back because you said you had been abroad in Scotland. What kind of work or activities were you doing b before you launched the nice rack?
the truth is my career arc is all over the place.
Okay.
Probably less of an arc and more of like splotches all over. Because I studied business strategy in my undergrad at university, and then after that I've just dibbled and dabbled in all sorts of business. I did supply chain for a little while. I helped in product at a company called Purple Mattress. I worked in brand a little bit at Purple. Then I went into the closet design. I haven't stayed at a job for terribly long. I get really restless, and I just once I've kind of learned what I think is interesting about the job, I often find something else to do. So it's not my best quality when it comes to employer satisfaction, but yeah, I've just kind of bounced around, and after leaving the closet job is I left to start this. So
Yeah. Yeah. It sounds like you have an extraordinary amount of creativity, design chops, and also entrepreneurship because you were scratching an itch there. And I've heard a lot of stories of folks who have had I guess a similar arc. You described it as blotches, but I think that's not an unusual path to get to like founding and making something really. Well, what is interesting that you took this technology that is honestly at least 150 years old, right? I mean, this has been
well,
around,
at least, yeah.
yeah, for a long time. And I was just reading, and I think it might have been like in the New York Times or something about how there is this backlash against dry cleaning and drying and all the instructions you get on your clothes like dry cleaning. It's like, you don't need to do that. You can do this and you can dry. And so I see, actually more people gravitating to kind of where you are right now, which is like, wanting to hang dry some clothes instead of, seeing that like a cashmere sweater or something instead of seeing it like shrink or send it out to the dry cleaner. So I don't know what kind of like have you thought about that aspect at all? Is people being more in tune to how they're doing their laundry?
Well, I do see right now people are just more becoming more conscientious of the impact that we each have on our planet and that rapid consumerism has a lot of repercussions. And so you see people with the things that they do have wanting to take better care of them, wanting to buy high quality and then use with care. And it's kind of like the idea of really cherishing and loving the pieces that you do own, instead of owning, a bunch that you don't even keep track of, especially with clothing. And so I do see a movement towards products like the Nice Rack because it's not going to wear out. It's really high quality material. And so it's a piece that you can install in your home and plan to keep in your home. And it's not only beautiful, but will help you to fulfill that, I guess, desire to be more conscientious about your consumerism and take better care of your things. So yeah, I absolutely do see a trend in that direction, and I think it's really cool and it's fun to be a part of it.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, and what? One last question for you, just about you said your customer reviews, customer feedback, and that it brings you joy when you say this was awesome, this was easy to use, this was like high quality. I'm wondering if customers also express to you any thoughts about like sustainability or the fact that it's locally made or anything like that they've noted about the Nice Rack, Holly.
Yeah, I would say there's one in particular sale that comes to mind. I had a woman reach out, I think it was on Etsy, and just asking me about the product and wanting one. But I think it was the shipping was a little bit deterring. But she said, "Is there anything we can do because I really want to purchase this from you because you make these?" And
Mm-hmm.
I just really loved that, and I'm like, yeah, I'm happy to work with you and make it so we can get you one of these because yeah, it is. I love that I make them in my garage, and it means a lot to me when other people can see that and are willing to support my business over any other way to dry laundry.
Yeah. Um, I lied to you about the question. I do have one more because I can't resist. I
No, go
mean,
ahead.
the Nice Rack thing, obviously, very loaded, very loaded name. But like, did you guys? I mean, how quickly did that come to you? What was the process of coming up with a name, or did you have the name before the product?
Well, actually, I'm glad that you asked because, again, my creative husband came in clutch here. We were sitting at a little Greek restaurant. It's called Santorini's here locally in Utah. I don't know if it's anywhere else, but I had the product idea and we were just talking about what should we name this. And he said, "I think you should name it the Nice Rack." And of course, it's obvious the implications. And I was a little apprehensive, but then as we discussed it, I don't have a lot. I didn't have any marketing budget at the time, so
Hmm.
I needed something that would be memorable, that would be something people would talk about just because of the name alone. That would do a lot for me as far as helping me get traction. And so, yeah, after talking about it a little bit, I decided that really was the best fit. And I have had, I think it's fun. People like something playful, especially when it
Yeah.
comes to a product that's just extremely functional. It's fun to have it be, something you can laugh about and kind of connect over. So yeah, I can thank my husband for the name and thank myself for listening to the good idea.
Hey, Holly, thank you again so much for joining us on the Manufacturing Report podcast and for sharing the story of the Nice Racks.